So the story I want to tell you starts a couple of years ago. Actually, a couple of pizza parties ago in November 2017. At that time, the pizza party day in our office in Kraków would look like this. First, we would have an all-hands meeting. Then we would have a tech talk that took more or less an hour by an internal speaker, someone from the office. And then we would drop the formal attitude and just go networking and talking over pizza and drinks. But on that day, or actually 2 days before the pizza party in November 2017, something was different. A distress message appeared on Slack. Does anyone have something ready to deliver for the tech talk? Because the person who was supposed to do it dropped off. 2 days before, an hour of talking about something sensible that had to end in one way. But this is what actually triggered me to try out one certain idea that I was thinking of a couple of weeks before, to organize the first Fail Fast Nights edition in Ocado. My name is Paweł Stobiecki, and I'm super happy that you came to my talk, although it is in English, so it's an entry barrier goes higher a little bit. I'm going to talk about learning from failures here and how to make it so that your whole company can do this. But I am also going to deliver a story which shows you that acting on a crazy idea at the right time may actually deliver great results. I'm super happy to be here in Barcelona for you, and that wouldn't be possible were it not for our great sponsors, so thank you very much for doing this. A couple of words about me. I am a software engineer, but I used to be a product manager for a while in my life, for 8 months, but that still counts. In the end, I decided that I prefer to have the final touch on the product and shape it till the end rather than manage how it's going to look like business-wise, so I just changed the craft back to software engineering. I am also a board game designer. If anyone here knows the game Golpe de Fe, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's one of my children. It was actually created during a hackathon. So board game designers also have hackathons, and this allows you to build a game that is then published in a 4-player team. And lastly, I am a food addict. It doesn't look like this, but yeah. I'm mostly interested in Asian cuisines, mostly Thai and Indian ones, but also with some spin-offs towards Cyprus and Georgia. So if you want to talk about food, I'm your man. And I currently work at Ocado Technology. We are a company that builds an end-to-end platform for retailers around the globe. And here on the map, you can see our development centers. Here's where I live, in Poland, in Kraków. And here's you. Actually, our office is like 2 streets away from here, so it's really, really close. Coming back to Fail Fast Nights, I first had the idea when I still attended startup meetings, and there I realized there is a company with this logo coming from Mexico. They've already been around for like 10 years now, and they are world famous for doing learning from failure meetups. As you can see here, they've already gone to more than 180 cities worldwide, so that's quite a success. When I learned about them, I went to their YouTube channel, watched some videos, and I saw it there. And the formula was so cool, I knew I had to try this out in Ocado at some point, and that's exactly what I did in November 2017. So I basically adapted the formula and gave birth to Fail Fast Nights, our internal adaptation of the format. So what is it actually? It's an event in which a couple of professionals, be it software engineers, UX designers, product people, C-level people sometimes, they come to the stage and talk about their big professional failures, their epic fails. These are serious stories. And many times they have serious consequences. So it looks like we are actually delivering a post-mortem analysis on stage. Anyone heard of post-mortems before? Okay, so many of you have heard, but in case someone watches, it's basically a process in which you dig into the details of a production incident, find the root cause, and then take actions or list actions to not repeat that mistake in the future. So yes, we were doing kind of post-mortem analysis on stage, but we mixed that with something that this formula encourages, so a fun-first approach. So we ended up mixing the post-mortems with stand-up comedy. So there were there was a lot of fun in it and also lots of learnings. The first time when we did it, you can see from the photo a lot has changed. It was, we had 2 days to make it happen, right? So it was kind of makeshift. I took myself, a friend from a neighboring team with whom we kind of collaborated on one story, and 4 other hastily collected speakers from inside the company, and we saved the day by replacing the tech talk with exactly this event. But it was, well, it was cool, but the audience was not very big for a start. My conclusion was that the people didn't really know what to expect. But when they did, the next time we did this, we had a full room. And we didn't stop on 2 editions. As you can see, we are now able to deliver an edition every year in Kraków, where it originated. And when COVID came and we had to go remote, we actually took the opportunity and invited the other Polish-speaking office to the party, Wrocław. That's another city in Poland. In December 2021, we actually went global. I mean, Ocado global, of course. So we invited all the offices, and the Polish speakers, the top ones, reprised their talks in English. We actually had one edition in Barcelona as well, in July last year. I came here for an entirely different reason, but still did this edition for our office here. And the latest success is April this year in Wrocław, where actually after their first real in-office edition, they founded a committee that would organize these events independently of me, just on their own, and that's a cool thing. But actually, why do this? Why does it work? Why is talking about failure so engaging, and why do people want to listen to that? Well, the answer depends on who you ask. If you ask the speakers, they will emphasize the openness of the formula. You can basically go to the stage and open up about your big professional failures without being blamed or shamed by anyone. You experience a kind of a catharsis on stage, a purifying effect. All that while having fun and working on your public speaking skills in a safe environment and a short format. After all, as a speaker, you only get to spend up to 10 minutes on stage. And how about the audience? Well, definitely they are having a good laugh, but not just that. While they are listening to the stories, this is already getting them to think. And it triggers conversations like, do we have something similar in our project right now? Are we running the risk of having the same failure? Is this something we experienced in the past? So yes, they are laughing, but at the same time they are learning, and that's super cool. During COVID, I had one product manager who actually came to me on Slack and asked me when the next edition is going to be, because they need something cheerful to happen. They need a bright star on the dark pandemic sky. So what do you think? Would you like to see something like this? Perhaps in your own company? The good news is you can do it. You can organize it. And now I will show you how. I promise it's not that difficult. After all, have you ever been to any kind of a meetup? See, you already know the basics. Let's take a look at what Failfast Nights look like from the audience point of view. So it all starts with a Slack message. It's coming. It's accompanied with an invite in the calendar where the date and time is stated, and of course, the location. If it's remote, it's a stream. If not, it's a room, preferably a big one, at least this size. So let's go to the day of the event. People gather and see a very similar setup to what we have here today. There is, of course, the audience, there is the stage, and there is me on stage, ready for my part. I start by telling people what they've actually signed up for by coming. So what's going to happen now? I also say why we are doing this and how it works together with our company culture to build more of it and enhance it. When there is a disease like COVID, I talk about it and I welcome other offices. I introduce a clever statement by a well-known persona like this. And in general, I prepare people for what's going to happen. Then I invite the first speaker to the stage. They deliver their 5 to 10 minute speech. They get a round of applause. I invite another person. And so it goes on for 4 to 6 people, at which point I come to the stage yet again and close the event. I thank everyone for coming, and especially the speakers, because the event wouldn't happen without them, and that gets them another round of applause. I finish with a meme or something similar, and invite people to a future edition. That's very important. Of course, all of that is recorded. So in case someone wasn't able to come, they will have a recording the next day or the day after on Slack. Easy, right? Just a meetup. A shorter one, just an hour. And an internal one, only for people inside your company. But still, it's a meetup. So now, who of you have ever organized a meetup? Anyone? OK, so you know what creeps up behind the scenes, right? There are a couple of things that have to be done for this to happen. So firstly, you need to look for the speakers. The hardest part that I will focus on the most in the future part of the talk. But when you have the speakers, you have to coordinate them. You have to put them into a Slack channel and then discuss the date and time that works for everyone. Then, that's something I do, at least. I prepare the template for the presentation so that they have to do the least they can. Just put in their name, the talk name, and the team name, and that's it. Sometimes, of course, they have questions, so you need to be able to answer them. Sometimes plans change. Someone's child falls ill right before the event, so you have to decide now whether to postpone the event or make it with fewer speakers. Sometimes someone needs to work on their speech, and there is you listening to that and giving feedback. And of course, on the day of the event, you have to make sure that your room hasn't just been stolen for a training of some kind. So all in all, it is something to put in your schedule. It's not zero work, right? I still say it's not difficult. It's hard work, maybe, but not difficult. And if there's anything difficult in it, it's looking for the speakers. Let's dig into that. You need to find about twice as many speakers as for a regular meetup. And I would say it's even more difficult than for a normal meetup because I'm not sure about your companies, but in mine, people don't just walk the corridors and brag about their failures. OK, some perhaps do, but these are exceptions. So let's take advantage of the fact that it's all internal and simply actively look for people with stories as the first thing. And the best way you can do this, it's not going to be accessible to you from the start, but if you have a previous edition of Fail Fast Nights, when you close the event, just call for speakers. Somehow, when people listen to failure stories, they tend to recall their own. So that's a perfect way to enlist them for a future edition. I also remind people that this event exists every 2 or 3 months on Slack, and I use an internal network of contacts, like fellow managers or product managers, to kind of scout or spy, if you prefer, for the stories for me. So if they hear that someone's just had a story, they let me know, and I go to Slack and ask that person, hello, I've just heard about story XYZ. Would you like to tell me more? And the fun thing is they already know me, and they know I'm doing this event. So they know what's coming, but still, they want to talk to me. And finally, let's not underestimate offline contact. So if you do have offices, let's just grab a cup of coffee and talk to people. Those you know, those you don't know. Perhaps someone will slip a story, and then we can ask them to talk. And when we listen to the stories and kind of evaluate them for the event, let's bear in mind the golden rule of Fail Fast Nights. You only get to talk about your own story or a story from your team where you played a major part. There is no place in this event for any blaming or public shaming. So if we did that, it would be blame fast, right? We don't want that. We want to create a safe place here. So if someone approaches me with a request to talk about another team's failure, I would just ask them for a contact to that team so that they can speak for themselves. So let's say we have the people with stories. Are there speakers yet? Not really. They haven't agreed to speak yet. And the best way we can convince them in is simply make them comfortable with the idea. Tell them what it's going to be like, and make sure they know it's not going to crash their project. After all, it's 10 minutes of talking about something they know by heart, their adventure. And of course, we need to be there for them in case they have any questions until they get comfortable with this. So now we do have speakers, but they might not have any prior public speaking experience. And they might not know the formula, never seen Fail Fast Nights before. So let's guide them a little bit to deliver a great event together. And the first guideline I tend to give them is don't use any slides, apart from what I prepared for you. So the name, the talk name, and the team name. That's here to let the audience focus on the speech, not the text. Sometimes, of course, there are exceptions. For instance, this image from Google Streets from some 35 kilometers away from Krakow, where I work, was necessary for people to understand one of my failure stories. Another thing I ask people to do is something they learned at school. It's a 3-act story structure. So an intro, an expansion, and an ending. This is here to help us engage the audience, and it works even better if we can find the climax in our story and make it shine. If you're from a big company, like I do, you'll get all kinds of people in the audience. Different roles, different departments. Some of them might not even know your app exists, let alone what it does. So you'll need to give them a good deal of context. And something else that is super easy to forget, but at the same time super crucial, are the takeaways. So I ask speakers explicitly to distill the learnings from their stories and deliver them at the end so that people don't have to look for them. And the final piece of advice: chill out. No one's going to laugh at you. They might laugh at the way you told your story, but that's an entirely different conversation. And remember, if you have fun on stage, everyone else will, I guarantee that. So now you know how to organize this from a technical point of view, but there is more. There is a secret sauce. 4 ingredients that I will want to sell to you right now that make this event from good to great. And the first one, a totally non-obvious one, is before the event I always ask my speakers for spoilers of their stories. Any ideas why? Promotion? Why? Well, it needs to be a surprise effect for the audience. So I can't really spoil it for others. There is a reason behind this, and that reason is I order them by impact. Because, you know, if a story about a failed build is going to be said right after an epic $5 million fail, it's going to disappear. But if we flip the order and do that consistently throughout the event, every story is going to be the best one so far, and it's going to get all the attention it deserves. Another trick I use, dress it up as non-work. Again, any ideas why? Yeah, I actually learned the hard way that it should be done. When I organized the global edition, I allied with a team that facilitates and helps people facilitate post-mortems in Ocado. And I branded this event with their logo, I listed them as co-organizers, and so on and so forth, but in the end, way fewer people came than we expected. My way of thinking about it is, people saw a meeting in the calendar that was branded as post-mortem, so that means it is work. But technically, that meeting was non-obligatory. So that means, let's prioritize something more pressing in that time and use it this way. And if we dress it up as non-work, people will treat it as a coffee break, as another football table match. They will come for entertainment, and they will come eagerly, but still, they will leave with the learnings, so that's our point. Speaking of attendance, I can really see the relationship between the number of people who came and how much time I had in advance to promote this event. It's super crucial for the attendance. My advice is to start at least 2 weeks ahead and use Slack, email, newsletters if you have them, town hall meetings if you have them, posters on the walls if you have the office, anything you can get hold of without being overly spammy. The 2 weeks are important especially for roles like product managers because their calendars tend to get blocked very quickly. So they need to know in advance and they need to know the why behind why they would come. And finally, the 4th ingredient is zero pressure. It can happen that right before the event, the speaker will come to you and say they would like to drop off from the event because they've just realized how much they hate public speaking. It happened to me. And that's okay. Actually, it's even better for me as the organizer and for the event that they don't speak now. But later, when they are confident they want to speak, perhaps having a better suiting story, they will speak eagerly. In the end, it's not me who should decide that they will speak. It's the speakers. So this is the secret sauce for ingredients that always work. And now let's go back to Earth for a while. Let's discuss some considerations that you might have when you try to implement this in your own company. So for example, you could ask me, why did you change so many things? Why didn't you just use the original Fuck Up Nights formula? It's tried and tested, right? That's true. We did change a couple of things. For example, we shortened the event. That's for us to be able to squeeze it into the working hours. Fuck Up Nights have a full meetup dedicated to this, so 2 or 3 hours, so they can afford to spend that time on it. We also have more speakers to be able to deliver more stories in the same time frame, and we give people less time to lower the entry barrier, to have as many speakers feeling comfortable as possible. Fuck Up Nights, from what I hear, also do a kind of a short storytelling training for people in advance of the event. We don't do that for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's another thing that people would have to put in their schedule, so it would put off some of the speakers. And secondly, with this short of a time frame and talking about your adventure, somehow these speeches simply come out great most of the time. And it's best if you put it as a detective story and reveal the mystery at the end. That's super engaging. Another thing that Fuck Up Nights do, but we don't, they prequel the event with a cultural or inspirational keynote about learning from failure. In our case, it's not really needed. We know our company's culture, and a 3-minute introduction into why we are doing this and how it helps us maintain and build this culture is enough. And another thing we do not actually do, but they do, is questions after speeches. Actually, I once asked the people if they want to have questions after speeches, and it was a big meh, so no. Fuck Up Nights have a full meetup, right? The people come here without knowing each other for 2 or 3 hours, and they will probably never meet each other afterwards. So the meetup is the only place where they can ask questions. Here, if we are internal, we can ask questions anytime. And if we combine that with a social event like a pizza party, we can even talk about it over the pizza and the drinks. So that's what we made different than the original, and I think it works for us. Another thing you could ask me is, how often to do this? We do it once per year. Is this even a success, something that happens every year? I will be honest with you. I tried to organize the second edition right after the first one, like 2 months after, and it didn't happen because we didn't have the speakers, so I stopped fighting. To me, there is something like a natural frequency in every company. It's going to be different in every company, and it depends on several factors. So we are able to collect the 5 or 6 speakers per year, but if you have more, go ahead. Do it more often, why not? Just mind one thing. It's better for you to make it more rare, but regular, rather than do 2 or 3 editions in a row, and then to stop, because then people will think this is just another initiative that was there and died. And there's a second factor to it. Think of a favorite TV series. The seasons don't come right after the other, right? There is this waiting time, the fasting, that gets you spinned onto what's going to happen next. So if you're waiting for something that you like, you actually enjoy it more. So that's something we get working for us as well. And there is this final dilemma, local or remote. Thanks to COVID, and honestly speaking, that's the one thing I'm grateful to it for, I know how both of these formulas work. And I would say both of them work well, but they are different. If you're a remote first company, basically you don't have a choice. You have to go remote. It will work. But if you have offices or many people working from home regularly, you can actually choose this option as well. And the one big buff that it gives you is that you now are able to look for speakers in all of the places that you will organize this edition for. Admittedly, I find it more difficult because I can't see these people every now and then face to face, but maybe it's just me. Also, this format has a couple of things you have to be aware of. So for example, if some of your offices don't speak English as your native language, doing it remotely for everyone might actually create another entry barrier for the speakers, because now they have to deliver their stories in a non-native language. And also, if you do it on a stream, which probably you're going to need because of the size of the audience, or if you don't, everyone is going to be on mute anyway, the speaker doesn't have any contact with the audience, and the audience doesn't have the contact with each other, so it's going to be less viral. And two final things to mind, probably obvious, but the time zones and cultural differences. It's about what we laugh at, but also how we work in different places. For example, when I did the global edition, I scheduled it for a Friday at 4 p.m. And then I was made aware that actually our Barcelona offices finishes work at 3 every Friday. So they will either have to stay up late or watch the recording. Many of these problems disappear if you do it on site. For example, you are able to just go to the stage and powiedzieć twoją historię po polsku, speak your story in Polish or in Spanish. For example, you could probably do this here. And that's easier for the speakers. Another thing that is there, if someone laughs at the audience, in a second or two, everyone's going to laugh. And that also works well for the speaker, because now they can see you, as I can see you now, and I can play with my body language, and I can see what kind of impact my talk is having on you. That's great. And also, if you do it in office, you can combine it with a social event, like we do with the pizza parties. So that creates, firstly, an incentive for people to come to the event, and secondly, a chance to network after the event, and for you to gather some stories, because they will get reminded, right? So all in all, both of these formats work, but if I were to choose as a speaker or as an organizer, I would always go for the in-office edition. So we've come a long way now. We know how to gather the speakers, we know how to prepare them so that we deliver a great event together, we know the secret sauce, and we have the considerations that we will have to do to adapt it at our companies. So now you may think, okay, I can do this. I can organize this in my own company. But how to convince them to actually let that happen? I will be fair with you. In many companies, it won't work. But in many, it will. I don't know all of your companies, so I will give you my best approximation. So why it works in Ocado technology where I work. In our case, it was actually pretty simple because of what we believe in. These two things are what we celebrate in Fail Fast Nights, but these are actually 2 out of 5 company values, so why not use it? If I come to the stage in front of perhaps as many as 400 people, which would be the current size of the Kraków office, I will not know many of these people, right? But still, I open up about my failure to them. I become vulnerable, and that's something that creates trust. And when you listen to my story, you also learn, and you learn fast. You know the steps that led to the failure, you know the root cause and the consequences and the takeaways that I drew from this story. And that's collective learning. There is also a third value that let me create this event in the first place, and it is called aligned autonomy. This is basically about if you have a good idea or a valuable experiment to perform, you will be able to get the support from the company as long as it doesn't clash with our policies. Another thing that we believe in, but we don't list it as values, is the no blame culture. That's basically about focusing on the mistakes that happen and trying to not to let them happen again, rather than blaming humans for being human and making human errors. This, plus the open-mindedness of the people that we have, it enables us to collect the speakers for edition by edition. And also, since I started working there for like 9 years ago, we've been compared to a big startup. It's not the case anymore, but some things stick in the culture, so we keep being curious and try to innovate. And actually, if you're trying to innovate, you need to accept the fact that you won't get it right the first time, right? So this is why it works in our case. And now, what kind of benefits can you expect if you run it in your own company? So how did it impact us? Firstly, it helped us domesticate mistakes. Of course, we don't want to make them, but we will. I talked about the cost of innovation already, And basically, that's part of reality. We are humans. We will make mistakes. The sooner we get them not to stop us from acting, the better. Speaking of which, sometimes when I walk through the office, I hear someone who has just failed at something. And they don't yell their heads about it anymore. Like, man, how much I messed this up. Now they say, man, I have such a story for fail fast nights. And that's a nice change. And finally, it helps us become collectively wiser by knowing of more mistakes and delivering this knowledge to many, many people. So we are able to avoid even more mistakes in the future. But wait. I said we did post-mortems at Ocado. So didn't post-mortems actually fix all of this for us? I would say this is a tricky question. Post-mortems are a great way to systematically eliminate and avoid production incidents. For this, they are great. There is a reason why we do them obligatory after each major incident in Ocado. By all means, do them if you don't start. But in terms of cultural changes, I think they could need some help. Even if you hear the name post-mortem, you can probably feel the vibe of the meeting, right? And this is something totally opposite to what Fail Fast Nights bring in. They bring in the fun factor and make the mistakes a little bit less scary. And there is a second factor to it. When we finish the post-mortem, we have a doc with the detailed steps, the root cause, the action points, and so on. We place that in an internally public Google Drive folder, and we post it on Slack that another post-mortem has come. And now imagine we have a big repo of knowledge that everyone in the company can access. The question is, how often do you go there? That's it. The pull mode doesn't really work. So what Fail Fast Nights does, it gets people into the room and delivers the learnings to them. It works in the push mode. So that's a perfect complementary mechanism to postmortems. It's actually a great broadcasting channel for the top stories. And that's why some teams actually put an action to the postmortem to talk about it on Fail Fast Nights. And that's a big way in which those two methods collaborate. So this is all for the company. And what's in it? For you, as the potential organizer. I'll just say it's a lot, and I'm not even talking about the utter satisfaction and fun that it will create for you personally. You will do something entirely different than your day job. You will get to know so many people around the company, which can actually pay off in a future software project, because this is like networking. This is getting contacts from the company. You will become known in the company for doing something awesome. People will associate you with the stories they heard, the fun they had, and the learnings they got from your events. You will also work on your public speaking skills, and especially facilitating meetups. And that's something that paid off in my case, because now I am the go-to person to conduct Tech Bites, which is a meetup by our company that we do in Krakow and in Barcelona as well. And last but definitely not least, it's going to allow you to make an impact. Just a story to highlight that. Some time ago in a Krakow office kitchen, I was just drinking coffee, chilling out with friends, and then a person approached. From my point of view, they were a total stranger. I don't know everyone in the office after all. And they went like, dude, I know you. You do Fail Fast Nights. Don't you ever stop doing that. And that's when I realized how big is the thing that I'm creating and how important it is to the people there. So, what do you think? How about you? Are you up for the challenge? If so, here are your first steps. Go to the Fuck Up Nights YouTube channel. You can scan this QR code and it will lead you there. That's how I started, and I bet it's going to kickstart you as well. Perhaps you will follow their formula literally by organizing the meetups afterward. Perhaps you will change something or take something from this talk. In any case, if you'd like to talk to someone who's done it before and has some experience, to validate an idea or just ask a question, I'm on LinkedIn, you can find me there and we can talk. Or if you have any questions now, it's a perfect time to ask them. Thank you.
So I don't understand, before the event you share the people that are going to present and the topics more or less, like during the promotion time. you share more about what is going to happen in the next edition?
Okay, so the question is, do I share the stories from the people or any titles or something like that before the event? I don't. I just say it's going to be a Fail Fast Night edition. Right now I'm in a good position that people already know what this is because we have all the recordings and I use them to promote. So as a first timer, it might be great to, for example, use some of the recordings from Fuck Up Nights because they are all on YouTube and they're public, or simply explain in some short words what the formula is going to be. Something you can share is who is going to speak, because that's not going to, spoil the surprise. Any other questions?
How you will manage when some companies usually share the wins, some companies share the failure.
Mm-hmm.
So how often the failure will be shared compared to the wins? Will this be, for example, in our company we used to share the same, in the same event, we share
Mm-hmm.
wins and failure.
Okay.
So how you will manage the two things?
Okay, so the question is, how often do you share the failures compared to the victories, to the successes, and how to balance that? This is a very good question, actually. I'm going to try and do as a generic answer as I can, because then I think it will be most useful. In general, people tend to be, and companies tend to be biased towards sharing the successes. This event is focused solely on failures to balance that. It's great that you share both the failures and the successes on one event, and I think it's perfect balance. So basically, this event will happen as often as you have the speakers, and that's more critical to me than the frequency at which we want to share failures, because you can't do something that you can't do, right? But still, I lost the thread. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'll come back to that later. Probably I'll remind myself to what I wanted to say. Sorry. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, so you just mentioned that you run the Fail Fast Nights as often as you have people to present,
Mm-hmm.
and you have around 400 people at the office, and you've been doing this for a couple of years. How easy it is for you nowadays that you have this culture already to find this 4 to 6 people? I'm trying to understand how hard it would be to organize something like this, and how often people will want to be sharing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's also an interesting question. I am able to find 5 to 6 speakers every year. And for a 400 people office, you can imagine that not many people are naturally inclined to want to speak up at this event. There is some work involved, of course, some convincing, some show and learn, some recordings from other events, just talking to those people mostly. Also, the network, it depends how many of the stories you know of, right? Because if you have a good network of spies, it will be helpful. Yeah, so it's something hard for me to evaluate if I don't know your company, because then there are different kinds of people. Some tend to be more extroverted than others. They will have an easier job to discuss this. I'm not sure what happened in your company before, whether people are open to speaking up about their failures in general or not. If you do post-mortems, that's definitely going to help. If you have the no-blame culture, for example, you'll definitely have an easier job organizing this. But if you don't, this event may lay a foundation for it. So it's still worth a try. I probably didn't repeat the question, by the way. No one noticed, never mind. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. So obviously you mentioned post-mortems as being complementary to this, but in terms of types of failures that people talk about, is it just these types of production issues that caused you to do a post-mortem, or what about kind of like higher level failures of like project management or the way something was handled that didn't necessarily cause an incident or a post-mortem to happen? Kind of you help people kind of identify like a failure to talk about, because I think some people probably struggle to even like identify that a failure happened if it isn't a incident or something like that. So how do you do anything along those lines?
Okay, so the question was, what kinds of failures do you actually discuss during these fail-fast nights? Are there only things that would cause a post-mortem, or are there like higher level problems that you talk about? And how do you help people identify that something is a failure worth speaking up about? I hope I got the essence. So there are a couple of questions in one. Many times I hear people saying like, maybe it's not worth telling this story at fail-fast nights. And my reply to this is, it's totally worth telling it as long as you feel comfortable with telling it. Because, well, of course, not every story is worth $5 million. But there is something for the introduction still for the event, right? So there is a room in this event for smaller stories as well. My stories were minor, I would say, most of them. The other question was about higher level, or maybe first let's talk about the ones that don't cause incidents. Not all of these failures were on production, but were they on production, that would be an epic fail. So that's still something worth talking about. For me, it's mostly, I do not restrict the stories content-wise. So for example, if someone wants to talk about something that they did in another company, I'm okay with that, as long as they are okay with that and they don't break any NDAs or stuff like that. And the final question is about higher level problems. This is a difficult one because in most cases there is no single person we can attribute that mistake to. And given the golden rule of fail-fast nights, then we cannot really speak about this incident without being confident that we don't do any blame fasting or blaming fast. How much time do we have left? It's 10 past, so we have 15 minutes left. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
Do you think it's important that the post-mortem culture is extended all around the company? Because in my company, we have the culture in the tech team, but not in other areas. And I think they have like 2 post-mortems in 7 years in other areas that are not tech teams. How important is that? Because maybe this helps extend this culture, or
perhaps.
Or it's important that it's first the post-mortem culture and then the fail-fast nights.
So the question was, how important is it to have a post-mortem culture in the whole of the company, not just the tech teams? And what should come first, the fail-fast nights or the post-mortem culture? 2 questions in one again. In terms of whether it's important for example, the product department to do things like post-mortems, let's come back to why we do post-mortems in the first place. So for me, they are worth doing where there are failures. We cannot easily identify why they happened, and they have a good potential for being repeated. If that is fulfilled, I mean, post-mortem, the process doesn't have anything inherently technical in it. So it will work in other places as well. In terms of whether to do fail-fast nights and the post-mortems, I don't know, to be fair. I can imagine both scenarios working. I can advocate for fail-fast nights because it doesn't come from the tech world strictly, and post-mortems do. So it might be easier to convince people to speak up at such an event rather than do the post-mortems first. But I agree that one of the things, if it happens, it will help the other one happen. Any other questions? If not, I have some as in every Marvel movie, I have some subtitle content for you. Why don't we try it out? Okay, so we have 13 minutes left. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough for more than one story, but anyway, I encourage you to talk about your failures. It's okay if we speak about them outside of the company, as long we don't mention anything confidential and so on and so forth. And here are a couple of reminders about the guidelines. So only your own story or something that was in your team, but you played the major part. And only if you feel safe with sharing. So no pressure. It's still like it works right now also. And if you're talking about something from inside of your company, just give us enough context for us to be able to understand the story. As I stated on the previous slide, I will start. And my story is kind of connected to what my wife does as her job. She is a forestry educator. So every now and then she grabs a couple of families and their children to a forest, and they do some activities together in the forest, something related to nature. And sometimes if the group is big, she asks me to help her out and be the second organizer. My story happens in June 2018, so 5 years ago now, and it's related to that. It's basically a day when she asked me to help out with the group. So we grabbed the families and we started walking towards the forest. Well, the forest, quite a usual one. Trees whispering, mosquitoes biting, butterflies coming up from under our feet. We are going deeper and deeper. We are arriving at our destination. Then the first activity happens, then the second one. Half an hour passes by and suddenly my phone rings. Which is weird because my phone is always on vibration, so it basically never rings. Except this time it wasn't my private phone. At that time, in my team at work, we had an on-call duty. You probably know what an on-call duty is. You get a phone, you are available 24/7 to fix a production incident if it happens. At that point, the on-call duty in our team was quite mild. We barely ever got paged. And if we did, that was an automated message that requested us to simply replay some events, and that was a single command line call that could wait a couple of hours in most cases. And even if someone human called us, that would probably be about something that we called data feeds. These are data exports to external customers that we do as a company, and this is actually the responsibility of a neighbor team. So what we would do then is we would dial in and ask the person to redirect to the other team, and that was our job. Besides, I have taken the on-call duty to the forest so many times. It's 2018, we have LTE. The mobile coverage is everywhere. I'll just sit at the laptop, play this one command, and that's it, right? So I just grabbed this on-call duty to the forest as well. I am answering the call. This one is a human, and they ask me to enter the incident some number channel. Okay, so I'm just sitting on the ground, opening my laptop, logging in. Just as a reminder, there are kids running around and mosquitoes biting. And I open Slack, find the incident manager, but it lags so much that I can't work with it. Because it wasn't a forest in Kraków. Kraków is a 700,000 inhabitant city. But this time, we went a little bit further, some 35 kilometers east. This is Kraków, this is where we were. It's called Las Chobocki. The closest city is Niepołomice. It's much, much smaller than Kraków. And there I learned that LTE in a forest is a rule in here, but not out there. So yeah, and the spicy bit was that at that time we had a policy in the company that since the event happened, we had 20 minutes to dial in and started investigating it, and otherwise we would have problems. So I basically shut down my laptop, put it into my backpack, said sorry to my wife, so that's all for you right now, and I started walking, or actually running at some point towards the edge of the forest, while looking at my phone whether I have the coverage or not. So after, as it happens in the American movies, right before the 20 minutes I arrived at this place, which you may recall, I sat down here, opened my laptop, yes, it works. I entered the Slack channel, asked the incident manager to redirect. He dialed in a person from that team, but since I was already there, well, I hate democracy since then, they said that I could well enough stay and help out. So I was there sitting at the edge of the forest and quite a busy road with my MacBook and a mobile modem or a router, and supported an external client for over an hour. And the fun thing is that actually the error wasn't on our side. So what I learned from this story is that there are actually borders to bravado. And since then, I don't grab my on-call duty to the forest, even if I know it's a safe one. I simply swap with another team member, and I do their duty on the day that is fit for them. And another thing I learned is if I do some work outside the company, on the ground, I cannot extrapolate the conditions from one place to another. So it's best if I actually go there first and make sure the conditions are what I expect. So that's it about my story. Thank you. We have 7 minutes left, so technically, if we have someone who would like to tell your story with regard to these rules, this is the time to come. If not, I am happy for us to end sooner, and I will encourage you to share some of the stories, maybe on the corridors, maybe in your own company, and you know how to find me in case you have questions. So, is there any volunteer?
It's not that fun.
Okay, it's okay. So, would you like to take the stage? A big applause for our first speaker.
It's 5 minutes will be enough. It's like probably 5 minutes.
Okay.
First, a recent story. I work for a train line, so we sell tickets. And
Would you like the mic?
we should make sure.
No problem. We can be as close as we can, but there is a lot of cable here, so no worries.
Okay. Should work here? Okay. So essentially, we sell tickets, and I did this PR. I received some comments. I say, okay. Before I received the comments, I was QAing it. I say, okay, was working. After receiving this comment, didn't QA, merge the PR, go in develop. I say, okay, everything will work. We didn't QA it. I say, thank you, Stefan, for your review. Looks good to me. I say, okay. What happens was that the day after, thanks God we have CI that do the regression, we do all the tests. The day after, the My Tickets page was breaking. So when you click View My Tickets, no one in UK could have been able to travel with the train. So thanks God, before the release, we noticed it and we did the fix, and well, everything went good. But yeah, we shared with the team this failure, but we saved it before it became a big failure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for volunteering. So as you could see, the stories don't have to be big to be fun, and they don't have to. You don't have to put a lot of effort in making them fun, because the impact itself and the fear of what could have happened itself does the job. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. Perhaps one other short story. If not, I would like to thank you very much for coming to this talk, and I'm super grateful for you guys to having me here. Enjoy learning from failures in your own teams and in your companies. Thank you.